All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. Pleased to have everyone today. My name is Steve Bauk. I'm president of Solution Synergy, and I'll be your host today. Joining me on the call is Josh Salas. He is the AppviewX Senior Solution Architect, and I think you're really going to enjoy his presentation. He was actually an AppviewX customer for many years, so he brings a lot of wonderful experience and knowledge with the AppviewX Cert Plus solution. When Josh and I talk to hospitals across the country, we find common certificate management issues. And one of the biggest ones right off the bat is visibility. They have no way to easily discover all of the certificates that are in their ecosystem. There's too many disparate systems, and there's internal and external certificates, and it's a very difficult thing to manage simply with spreadsheet tools. And then if you have old certificates like SHA-1 certs or Rogue certs, self-signed certs, these are great targets for hackers, and we certainly want to try and help in that area as well. Oftentimes, an expired certificate brings down servers and devices, and then you have a lot of unhappy customers, and nobody really likes being in that position. Then from a management control perspective, management wants you to be able to avoid those expired certificates or some of the other things that I've mentioned, but they want you to report on expiration and policy enforcement, and you really don't have any real good tools to do that with. There's no control of who's buying what kind of certs or from which CA. So we're gonna help in that arena as well. And then the big one that everybody mentions is, the renewal workflow process. In most cases, you may have to issue a renewal ticket through, a ServiceNow application, or in many cases, it's just a flat-out manual renewal process that you have to go through burdensome tasks and practically manually walk that renewal request through. So these are a lot of the common issues that Josh and I hear all the time. I'm sure some of these resonate with you. Here's an example, just to put it more in graphical perspective, but let's say you have 1,500 certificates, and you've got 10 CA vendors that you have to work with. Now, if you don't have any tools, it's kind of difficult to manage all those different certificates from whichever CA that it came from. So we're going to introduce you to the AppviewX Cert Plus platform. And what it's going to do for you, and you'll see this in our presentation today, is it's going to first go out and crawl your network and discover all of your certificates. It's going to allow you to automate that process, have an inventory of all your certificates, and have a good audit trail. It's going to illustrate graphically, and this is one of the fun parts of the solution, is that it has a lot of good graphic representation showing you the chain of trust and the device that certificate is assigned to. In this case, we've got F5, but it could be a Citrix NetScaler or some other device, and Josh is going to show you that. Then we're going to help you manage all those certs in that multi-vendor environment from a single pane of glass. And that's going to help you enforce the compliance issues that we were talking about. And for example, again, we have a lot of good graphical information here. All of these things you can drill down on with the click of a button. So if you wanted to look at this policy compliance report on servers, we see that 5% of the server certificates are out of compliance. I wonder why. So you just click on that red slice, and it would then give you more information, more detailed information to be able to hopefully resolve those issues. And then finally, a lot of organizations with solutions will be told they can automate these workflows, and the problem is that you start from scratch. And at AppviewX, we don't do that. We've done this enough times. We've worked with all size organizations, and so part of the benefit that we bring to the table is that we've got templates already designed, 120 plus automation workflow templates. And more often than not, instead of you being in a situation where any vendor can tell you, we'll go ahead and create a workflow for you, and who knows how long it's going to take to do that. We've got templates that are going to cut down that effort significantly. More times than not, we can find a template that, maybe it doesn't do 100% of what you want it to do. We've got to customize it a little bit, but it greatly reduces the time frame to automate your renewal process and other workflows that you'd like to do. And obviously eliminate the errors, remove the manual steps, and reduce cost. Some of our healthcare customers, just to give you a perspective, on the provider side, Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee, Horizon Blue Cross. On the provider side, Kaiser Permanente. This is just a partial list. Josh has a lot of great information he wants to share with you, so we'll turn it over to Josh. And by the way, Josh and I encourage a lot of questions. Don't feel like you have to wait till the end of the presentation. Just jump right in and fire away, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. Josh, it's all yours.
Thanks, Steve. All right, so kind of starting from the beginning, this is going to be the landing page we see when we come into the Certificate Plus product. But I'm going to start by going through discovery, how we get the certificates into the product in and of itself. And we start with that with a couple different methods. The first and most basic is going to be the network scan option. And as I go through this demo, I'm going to mention several different times that our product is configurable, and that's important in the fact that we focus on being able to configure for what your particular business's needs are. What your organization needs, what they for example, with the scanning, whether it be in off hours, breaking it into batches, things like that, as opposed to customization, which typically comes with a cost, whether that cost be, resource for development, writing code, whatever it happens to be. We try to stay away from customization. We focus on, configuration, being able to give you all the options to do what you need. And the network discovery is no different. Like a lot of other network discovery tools out there, we're going to come through here. We're going to ask you if you want to run the scan now, if you want to do it in a scheduled manner, whether or not you're looking for, an IP range, you're going after a subnet, you're going after a list of URLs, where we're going to start and end with those IP ranges, how many, we're going to do per batch, et cetera, et cetera. We can really configure this so that we can be non-impactful to your network and do this scan, including even throttling the scans. Alternatively, if your organization happens to have a network scanning tool in place already, maybe for network threat vulnerability or something like that, a Qualys or a Nessus, Tenable, Rapid7, that type of thing, we can integrate directly with those tools and use their network scans in place of having to add additional network scanning to your network. So that exists as an option as well. So continuing on with the different types of scanning we can also do a managed devices scan, a certificate authority scan, or a cloud scan. And I'm going to show you these, and it kind of comes into a dual purpose, because at this point we start talking about not only how we can discover certificates, but how we can act on your behalf and manage those certificates going forward. The goal of our tool is a true end-to-end certificate lifecycle management tool, meaning that, all the way from the inception of I need a certificate to that certificate is on an endpoint and presented to end users, we help you manage that entire flow. As for certificate authorities, we are vendor agnostic. We don't really focus on any one or group of vendors. We try to remain relevant with what we see our customers using. So we continually add, different vendors to our tool, and we do so largely in a agentless manner. We focus on using APIs and other methods that are agentless in order to integrate with these so that there's no additional software overhead, no additional needs to deploy across the network. So with that said, you'll see, we have most of the major certificate authorities included within here, your Certigos, DigiCert, Entrust, GlobalSign, Google, Amazon, and then, also your internal PKIs with Microsoft and, several other vendors, depending on who they have. One important thing to mention here, though, is that just because we don't have a vendor logo here doesn't mean we don't support it. You'll see that there's options here for custom, and there's also a generic certificate authority option down here. Once again, if they have some type of programming interface we can interact with, we can typically bring them in through customized workflows and manage those certificate tools as well. So when we bring these in and we actually add a specific certificate authority in here, not only does it allow us to discover from those certificate authorities, and we'll pull down the certificates that have been issued and also any templates or profiles that certificate authority is using, but we will also be able to act on your behalf going forward. And we can wrap role-based access controls around those to ensure the right people have the right access. But no longer do you have to log into 2 or 3 different CAs. You can log into AppviewX and have a single pane of glass in order to manage all your certificate authority needs. So then continuing on to the device management section. So when we start talking about managing endpoints, discovering certificates from endpoints, deploying certificates, doing renewals, all those types of things, we have a very large support base of different endpoints that are fairly common for folks to use. In the ADC load balancer space, your A10 networks, your F5 networks, appliances, Citrix NetScaler, Avi networks, we're starting to see a lot of, definitely a lot of Amazon ELB out there. We have native integrations for these, and we can go ahead and integrate directly with them, not only discover your certificates from those devices, but also deploy certificates to them and renew certificates all the way down to the individual VIP level of these appliances. So being able to deploy to the actual VIP that's presenting pages or services to your end users. The next most common we probably see is going to be servers. Once again, vendor agnostic. So, if you're looking for your Apache Tomcat servers, if you're looking for Linux servers in and of themselves, in the Linux world also, JBoss maybe, or Nginx, we have integration points with all of them. When we get into Microsoft, your Microsoft IS, Microsoft Server, SQL, etc., we have native integration points, and we can manage those certificates and discover those certificates from these devices. So, very vendor agnostic, very, as we were, discussing earlier, configurable to be able to meet whatever your particular needs are. I can go through all of these. It would take me forever, but we do have integration points with, your info blocks and bind DNS. When we talk about firewall, Palo Alto, Checkpoint, F5, Cisco ASAs, whatever you happen to be using. Talking about switches, Arista and Cisco, Juniper switches, routers, Juniper and Cisco primarily. When we talk about cloud, though, if you're looking into the cloud, we do have native integrations with the 3 major cloud providers, which would be, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. So AWS, GCP, and Azure. So we do have native integrations with them. We can help you manage your certificates in the cloud, which actually brings me to a good point about our deployment model. We have a couple of options for deployment. Our package essentially is a virtual appliance that you can deploy either on-prem, in the cloud, or in a hybrid cloud environment. The package, the virtual appliance in and of itself is running a Linux-based operating system with Kubernetes to ensure high availability of services, and also a MongoDB, which allows for native high availability database replication without the need for any additional software in order to set up a high availability model, or even just a good redundancy model without needing to buy additional operating systems, licenses for software or replication software, that type of thing. We include everything you need right in the package, and then we manage that package for you with regular updates to our product. So then continuing on through here, once we've done our discovery and we've brought in our certificates, we go ahead and we start to see, what the product brings to the table, how we can start to help you manage your certificates and get a good visibility into the environment. That's when these graphs and reports start to populate. But before I go there, I'm going to just go to a specific certificate and show that. This would be a specific certificate view. So when we bring in certificates, we can see the entire chain of trust for that certificate. We're able to manage the certificate directly from here. And one important thing to note is this is all an administrator's view. This is part one of the product. Most folks look towards an end goal of automating these things and integrating with their service catalogs, whether it be a ServiceNow or a BMC Remedy or Jira, Atlassian, that type of thing. And we do have native integrations for all of those, and we can help PKI administrators get out of the day-to-day management of certificates and to an end user enablement piece. And I'll show that in just a bit. But this is from more of an administrator's view. So from an administrator, they'd be able to come in here, they'd be able to do these functions from this aspect, and then you can wrap role-based access controls around all these functions to decide what your end users can or cannot do. So we see all the standard functions we'd expect to be able to do with a certificate here, whether it be to delete the certificate, download the certificate and key, and then when we do download the certificate and key, we have the option to bring it down in multiple different methods. Whether that be a PEM file, a DER file, PKCS, JKS, we can bring it down, download that in whichever method you choose to bring it down so that you can go and manually import it if you choose to do so. We also have the ability to, regenerate or renew a certificate from here or revoke it. And when we look at something like a regeneration, we see all the standard options we would expect when regenerating a certificate or creating a certificate. We can choose to have the certificate renew automatically, and we can set the threshold for when that will be renewing, whether that be 1 day, 10 days, 30 days, however you decide to do it for your organization's use. Same for regeneration if you're looking to, regenerate the entire certificate and key pair. We can choose, where we're generating that from. We can choose how we get the CSR. So we can either act on your behalf and generate a CSR for you. We can upload a CSR manually. If you do have an HSM in your environment, we can interact with that HSM and have it generate the CSR for us, or we can get CSRs directly from the endpoints that we're integrated with. Then, the rest of this is going to be pretty standard of what you would see. We can set our security threat footprint here as to, what we want these certificates to have for security capabilities, what the length of validity for this certificate is going to be. And we can go ahead and we can regenerate the certificate and make a new certificate. When we do that, what we wind up with is with multiples of that certificate. And these can be set to be cleaned up automatically over a period of time. But we maintain a history of these certificates for two reasons. One, in the case of a need for rollback, in order to roll back a certificate, we keep it here so we can do so. And then alternatively, we also keep it here for auditing reasons. If you have a specific audit reason around having to have your certificates remain in place. We will maintain a history of this certificate so we can go back and see the previous iterations of this particular certificate. And you can go to each of these and manage those individually. We really focus on that single pane of glass, being able to do everything from a centralized point of view without having to log into multiple portals. So the next thing we see in the certificate view here is we can actually go ahead and see all the places that the certificate is currently in use. This gives us a complete map of the certificate, lets us know when we're going to be doing any functions with the certificate, where else the certificate is currently being used. And then, these are expandable or collapsible as necessary. So, if we decide that we no longer want to have the certificate on this Avview connector, we can go through and delete that certificate off of there. We can also add additional connectors if we have, additional things that come into this load balance farm. We can come through and add load balancers or add servers and add different connectors to the certificate and then push that certificate out to those endpoints. So that we have the certificate wherever we need it. As you can see, when we do these certificate functions, there's a couple different options here. We can either push to all devices or we can push to a specific device. And when we do that, we're going to get options for approval of the push, and then we're also going to get the implement. So this is typically going to be pushing to a device itself and then doing the binding of that certificate to the endpoint. So in the case of an F5, this has already been pushed to the F5 appliance. Now it's just a matter of implementing it to the VIP that we want it attached to. In these cases, these are looking for approval to even push to the appliance themselves. In a case of an IS, it might be that it would be approval to push to the server itself, and then the implement would be binding it to IS, or alternatively attaching it to a vhost and Apache, etc. So continuing on to the reporting and dashboards. These dashboards, as Steve touched on briefly, are all interactive. We can click into these dashboards, find out what we need. These reports are all customizable, and they're also wrapped in role-based access control. So as you start to go towards the piece of end user enablement, when a user logs in here, they won't see everybody's certificates. They're going to see the certificates that belong to them. And these reports are going to generate dynamically based on that information. And these reports can be designed for whatever you're looking for, whether it be around expiry, whether it be around issuance, and these can be exported in PDF, CSV, etc. And they can also be scheduled to be sent out, via email or Slack or Teams or whatever your notification method is chosen to be. As Steve mentioned, you can click on these. So if we take a look at the expiry report by month, and we click on the red portion here, it's going to show us all the certificates that were not auto-renewed in March via that chart. And then we can go into these specific certificates and drill down into each one individually to see what we have, and even do a renewal directly from here if that's what we choose to do. So another important point when talking about these graphs was another one that Steve had touched on during his talk, which is around the policy compliance. So beyond just managing certificates, we also want to help you manage your security around certificates themselves. We're seeing more and more, outages, security vulnerabilities that result from certificates. And a lot of times that's because of an old or expired certificate or a weak cipher set on a certificate or something to that effect. And that's where these compliance reports help us. We can actually go ahead and click into these compliance reports, as Steve mentioned, and we can get a little better view of what's outside of compliance. And these compliance policies are configurable, so you can decide what is compliant and what's not compliant for your particular organization. And where this helps is with older certificates that start falling out of compliance, and also with, folks, let's say, skirting the process, maybe not intentionally, not in a malicious way. You might have a developer that's trying to quickly get an application available and they self-sign or they use a third-party certificate in order to get that application presented. This is going to help expose some of those and let us see, what's out there that shouldn't be out there and how we can remediate it. In the case of this certificate, the policy states that we should have this metadata within the certificate, and we should be using SHA-512 as our hash function, but it's actually using SHA-256 and it's missing all the metadata. So that tells us that the certificate is out of compliance, and we need to go and resolve that certificate. And where we decide what this compliance policy looks like is within the CA policy itself. And so to talk about the CA policy, I need to first talk about groups. Groups are logical containers of certificates. These are how we group the certificates. We decide who gets notified when a certificate is up for renewal or coming to the end of its expiration. And this helps us wrap these CA policies, because we may have, a looser policy for a DevOps organization than we would have for maybe a DMZ or a web, hosting team. These can be broken up by teams, platforms, certificate types, CAs, whatever you choose. Once again, very configurable, but this will create logical groupings of certificates for us to go ahead and apply CA policies to and notifications. And once we have those groups, we can start to build these CA policies. Within the CA policies themselves, we can assign certificate authorities. We can go ahead and decide specific, profile types or account types that we want to use for, anybody within this group. Decide what the defaults should be for the, security footprint of the certificate. What our defaults should be for the metadata that are put within here, and then we can tag those to these groups. That also plays into when we start talking about end user enablement. We no longer need to require every user to know exactly what security threat footprint they should be using, exactly what metadata should be within the certificate. We just ask them for the variable fields like email and common name, and therefore we can go ahead and build the rest of the certificate out for them in a standardized, repeatable way. So then the next thing I'll talk about is when we do start actually looking at end user enablement. We are capable of integrating, as I mentioned earlier, with your ITSMs, most of the major ones that are out there, and several others we don't have native integrations for, but we have experience integrating through API. When we do that, we have two options. We can either use the service catalog that you have, or we do have our own service catalog we can present to the users. And within this service catalog, we can come through here and we can get, some of the standard functionalities that we would look to use in the tool, like, generating a certificate. And the users can come and click on this and get a very simple, capability for creating their certificate without having to go into a whole lot of extra data. So in this case, this is based around a Microsoft Certificate Authority. We can go through here, we can plug in the blanks, decide which group we're assigning to, which can also be assigned based on their role-based access off of their user. So that will auto-populate in the case of a user that's not an administrator. And then go ahead and choose the rest of the basics here, and then click submit. But they don't have to go through and put in all their information as for the the security threat footprint and put in the metadata of the certificate. That's already been established for them in the policy. They just go through here and plug in their blanks, click submit, and it's going to go ahead and generate a request. In this case, this is a ServiceNow integrated ticket. So this is going to create a change request within ServiceNow and go ahead and create that certificate, file all the paperwork for us, and then we'll have access to that certificate to put it into an endpoint. The way that these are established is through workflows. We have about 200 of these workflows that are built into the product itself that ship with the product that you get. And then we have another probably 300 or so that are typically available on demand that we've built for other customers. And these meet most of the common use cases you're going to see, like certificate creation, renewal, push to endpoints, things like that. How these are built is pretty straightforward. We have a visual-based workflow policy editor. And when you come in, you can edit these existing. This is one of the ones that's built within the tool itself. This is, once again, a ServiceNow integrated ticket. What this looks like from the customer perspective is this. It's a couple of simple forms they fill in and they submit, and that'll go ahead and create the ticket for them. What this looks like from a workflow build is here, and we can add anything in here that we need to, additional approval tasks or notifications, that type of thing. This can also be brought out to other tools. So if you have an OpenShift or a Jenkins, Terraform, Ansible, we can natively integrate with all of those tools and bring out these plugins and these scripts in order to integrate with them as well. We also have our REST API exposed. So if you're looking at automation through third-party tools, we can generate the API call for this flow right here. And then you can go ahead and plug in the variables and have a third-party tool call this workflow and request these certificates as well. As for these workflows, they're not rocket science to create or edit. In fact, we try to keep it very, very easy to use. It's a Python-based scripting. And most of the options that you're going to be looking to use, whether it's a REST call or an if statement or something to that effect, you drag and drop the object onto here. You go ahead and you plug in whatever blanks you need, establish your variables, and then you can go ahead and actually, from any of these, click and drag to anywhere in the workflow you want to put them, rearrange these, the order in which things happen, whatever you're looking to do. So a very powerful, very extensible workflow engine that allows you to really get down into configuring your particular needs and getting that end user enablement piece in place. So with that said, I'll take a look at another workflow here that I can show you, and that's going to be around notifications. So we have default notifications built in that are very simplistic, and you can build them out however you want. We also have the capability of getting into a very specific, very configurable workflow. This is one of the ones that also comes shipped with the tool. It's had some minor modifications to it, and the fact that it's had Slack added to it, and that we've specifically tied this one to ServiceNow. However, what this workflow does is a notification of expiration. And it's constantly checking for certificates that are coming close to expiry. At 90 days, it goes ahead and it creates a ticket within the ITSM, and it goes ahead and sends out a notification via email and Slack to the team that owns the certificate to let them know that their certificate is expiring in 90 days. After 30 days has passed, it goes ahead and it escalates that ticket to a medium severity. So now we're at 60 days, so it sends out a 60-day notification, this time to that team that owns the certificate and their manager. Another 30 days passes, and we go ahead and escalate that ticket to a high severity. And we send yet another email out to that team and their manager, but we also include the PKI team at this point to let them know that it's expiring. And then ultimately, we would send out an expired notification. Last place I was at, we actually added a leg to this rule. And the leg that we added was actually based around renewal and pushing. So what we did is we created a renew certificate functionality within here that renewed the certificate at 1 day from expiry. And then we went ahead and had it push the certificate and close the ticket. So it pushed it out to, in this case, what was a 2 high availability pairs of F5 appliances in 2 different data centers. So 4 LTM, F5 LTM appliances, and then also 16 web servers, 8 and 8, spread across 2 different data centers that were IIS. So it renewed the certificate, it pushed it to those IIS and F5 servers, and then bound it to the endpoints. And that allowed us to avoid any kind of outage if it was missed to happen. Our company was a little bit touchy about full automation on very public-facing web servers. They always wanted to have an administrator there. We, from a security PKI aspect, decided to add this leg in here as a kind of last chance emergency, and we actually had it save us a pretty major outage. So it became standard play after that. So looking at the reports, I mentioned they are customizable. You can do many different things with the reports within this tool. One of the examples that I have specifically is with a customer that was looking to remediate some older versions of TLS. They wanted to get rid of TLS 1 and 1.1. So we built this report for them that showed them all the TLS versions they had exposed on all their different endpoints and allowed them to start to identify where they needed to remediate. Then beyond that, our customer success team, which I'll talk about them briefly, our customer success team comes with the subscription to our product. They are strictly dedicated to making sure that you're successful. That is their whole job. There's a customer success engineer and a customer success manager that help with any types of projects or things you need to get done. In the particular case of this customer, they were looking to mitigate these older versions of TLS. So I helped them build this report so they could kind of scope their project. And then our customer success team took this report and made it actionable to where you could actually click within the report, choose the endpoints that you were looking to mitigate, and then run the correct functions to mitigate those endpoints down to only allow TLS 1.2. So, these functions are all very configurable, very, very specific to meeting the needs of specific organizations and being able to do so and not have to worry about doing it blindly. Our customer success team helps, get you there. So the last thing that I'll talk about here briefly is just our role-based access controls. We are able to integrate with your LDAP AD, Radius, TACAX, SAML SSO functionalities in order to authenticate your users. And then based on those assertions we get from those authentications, we can go ahead and generate role-based access controls for specific groups of users. These role-based access controls are extremely granular. You can go through and you can decide, very specifically, what certificate functions they have access to, whether they can, view just their certs, other certs, renewal, regeneration, delete, revoke. New creation, all of it is very configurable as to how you want to make that happen and what exactly you want the users to be able to do. And, even from service accounts and that type of thing, wrapping controls around it. These same role-based access controls are all available as well through the REST API, meaning that we can also work as an API gateway in order to do several of the functions you'd want to do for certificate management from automation tools. Last thing that I'll touch on that's typically very important to healthcare is logging. We do log everything so that you're able to be, get the necessary information that you need for auditing. We're syslog enabled, so we can offload these to syslog servers, or we can also integrate with Splunk or Elastic in order to get these logs into a centralized data warehouse where they can be parsed and searched through. That's the high level of the tool. Are there any questions that you have for me? Anything specific you'd like to see?